Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership, and business from the inside out. And today, I always say this, but I have Marla Crawford, all the way from one of my favorite cities in the world, New York City, in the suburbs of New York City. Welcome to the show, Marla.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thank you. And those tulips, they look divine. We were commenting on our backdrops. They go really well with my pretty picture as well. But they look absolutely beautiful, don't they? Really big.
I love flowers. They're always uplifting and vibrant, and I don't think you could be sad looking at a flower. So
No.
I love flowers.
What is your favorite flower?
It's the tulip.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, my favorite is the sunflower, and it's because it's so bright.
Cheerful. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Marla, thank you for joining the show. I'm thrilled to have you here, and we're going to have quite the conversation. Let's get into it. I'll share a little bit about you, and then I'm going to hand it over to you to tell us a little bit about your journey. I'm going to start with that you're a mum and you have two children, a son and a daughter, and quite the family when it comes to legal, lawyers, and politics. And you've got a little grandson as well, so he's the joy of your whole entire family, and you've had quite the career and continue to have quite the career as you're the General Counsel at Cimplifi, Cimplifi, which I love. You're a trustee, you're an advisor, and you're part of the chief community supporting and, women in leadership in executive roles, which is a great community to be a part of. And as General Counsel at Cimplifi, you work at the intersection of legal, compliance, and business operations. Also important, and even more important than ever, compliance when it comes to AI in this world we're in. And you help organizations navigate complexity, risk, and transformation in high-stakes environments. You've also got a background spanning operational leadership, client delivery, and organizational change. And you must see so much change, this continuous change. We were just talking about that pre-show. From what I understand, Marla, you focus on building systems that drive performance and trust. And your work centers on aligning people, process, and technology, ensuring teams can operate effectively while maintaining clarity and accountability. And I love this bit. You're known for your grounded leadership style, emphasizing respect, humility, and disciplined execution as a foundation for sustainable transformation. When you booked in for the pod and I asked you what's one unique insight or lived experience or where you've reshaped life, leadership, and or business, you said there are many keys to success, but a few that can be overlooked and I think are meaningful. Number one, be friendly and respond to everyone. Two, be respectful and humble. And three, be happy with what you are and what you have, even if you are striving for more. I love those. When I read them, I was like, oh, man, it's just, they're so important. I'm going to let you start wherever you like, but tell us a little bit about your journey, in terms of, mum, leadership, what it's like to, as a woman, climbing, I shouldn't say climbing, but, getting into exec roles.
Well, I started 1988 straight out of law school in big law. I went into Jones Day, a multinational firm many people are familiar with. And I was on traditional track as a litigator. And then I had my first child, my daughter, who now is also a lawyer in big law and managing many of the same challenges that I managed. But I needed to organize my life better. So I specialized in the discovery or disclosure phase of litigation, managing matters that had a lot of information. And at that time, it was mostly paper documents or individuals' testimony, and I was really good at it. I had a librarian-like ability to remember where information was and to pull it out of boxes and shelves of paper documents. And I was good at it, and no one really wanted to do that. So it was a way for me to organize and manage my life as a mom and a lawyer, and do something a little bit different that was valued in a different way.
Oh.
That led to the pivotal moment of my career in 2001 when the Enron came across my legal doorstep, and I was chosen to work on the discovery side of that litigation, which turned out to be the first e-discovery case, the
Wow.
first case that involved email.
Mm,
So that really was
incredible.
an accelerator for the rest of my career.
Mm, yeah. I mean, what quite incredible, right? Like the first e-discovery case, and here we are. Well, no, well, how many years on? And
It's
we're
25 years later.
25 years later,
Yeah.
and that was a revolution back then, when it comes to email and the way it's come into the organization. And here you are, right in the middle of it, in terms of, well, like running it from a first e-discovery. And then fast forward to today, how different is that, in terms of what you're seeing now to what that experience was like, that catapulted your career?
There's a lot of similarities. So, in 2001, it was really a pivotal moment where something other than the law is important to the outcome of a matter.
Mm.
And it was technology. So it was really the first time that technology invaded the practice of law. People had to adopt it. It was a new skill set. There was a lot of skepticism, trepidation. People were fearful of it, but on the other hand, they knew they had to use it. So that's similar to today, where people have the same fear of AI, but they're also adopting it, realizing that it can be helpful, realizing it's probably no longer a choice, but a mandate.
Mm.
So those are similarities, but the difference is, I think, the speed with which AI is changing our entire civilization,
Mm.
everything that we touch. Yes, that happened also with technology in 2001, but the speed of AI and the speed that AI is changing things is different.
What do you think of the speed, Marla? Do you think it's too going too fast, or do you think it's just part of the way the world is now, and that we just have to, rather than try and keep up with the speed of it, that we have to, I guess, when it comes to rhythm, we have to find our own rhythm within the speed of the way the world is changing. I mean, you do a lot of organizational change, transformation in high stakes environments. It feels like we're in a completely high stake environment continuously right now. You wake up every day and you're like, how fast is today going to go? And what have I got to try and keep up with? As a leader, and in terms of it, working with the teams, etc., we can't keep up. Like, it's impossible to keep up. So, well, I think it is. I don't know what you think, but so for me, it's how do you then keep yourself grounded and ensure that you're going with the rhythm, but going at a pace that is sustainable versus complete and utter exhaustion and just like, overwhelm and overload.
My life experience with progress in most arenas is one step forward, two steps back. So whether that's, women's rights or equality or technology or the pace of the change of law, a lot of times we take a step forward and then over time we see a few steps back and then we lap the first step.
Ugh.
So I think that that's an expectation that I personally have, but I also think that adoption of AI is not a choice, especially in my field.
Yeah.
In law and technology is required, but it is also required to go at a comfortable pace and to make sure there's a quality control level and a human review. They call it human in the loop, but a human who is keeping an eye on things, guiding things, making creative decisions. Because I don't think AI is as creative as a human. I still believe in the human spirit and the distinction of something that comes from technology or comes from the human mind. So I view AI as more of an enhancement at this
Yes.
stage.
Yeah. Do you think that will always be the case? We were talking again pre-show. I was probably, just had a coffee, so I was going 100 miles an hour, all my energy, high energy levels, in the morning. But do you do you see there will be more and more of a requirement when it comes to the human in the loop in terms of those creative decisions? I look at AI and I think about it, from it spots all the patterns, but it's then as a human, and especially I'm keen to get your thoughts from a leadership perspective as well, in terms of, and again, I'll keep coming back to these high stakes environments. What's your view? I mean, my view is that I don't necessarily think that AI can make all that decisions, and I think that this is going to also change the way leaders, make decisions, creatively respond, like you say. Like, what do you think? What's your view on that?
I think for today, I'm viewing it as an enhancer. I still
Mm,
believe in the creativity of the human mind and the power of our senses, smell, touch, taste. I believe in all of that being a differentiator, and that we won't be overtaken by the computers. But I also think if we don't learn to responsibly use it, if we don't learn how it's going to accelerate our workflow, make our lives better, more efficient, more accurate in many ways, that would be a mistake,
yeah.
because I do think that we have a tool that can make our lives measurably better.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Which takes me to my next question. Tell me a little about leadership and what you've seen and your own experience in terms of, you mentioned at the start of the show the juggle and, needing the systems and everything in order. It's not easy when you have wearing many different hats in terms of being a mom, in a senior role, wanting the career as well as wanting to be, present as a mom, etc. And I use that as an example. How much do you feel leadership is changing also as part of the way the world is reshaping, if you like?
I think that the key to leadership in general is the acknowledgement that everybody thinks that their issue is the most important, that their wants, that their needs, that what's happening to them is the most important thing. And a leader has to be respectful and acknowledge that. So I have been sitting at my desk trying to finish a multi-million dollar contract and negotiations where I'll get pinged on the side by somebody who maybe is having difficulty prioritizing their workflow, or somebody who wants to know if the company has um, a policy around pet grievance. If you're mourning your pet, what is the policy? In that moment, I may feel these things are not important. I can't manage them. I have to do this multi-million dollar
Yes.
contract. But a leader has to realize that in that moment, to these people, all these things are equally important. And that is the burden of a leader, to manage that, and to try to make sure that everybody is satisfied in some way with the outcome. Maybe some are satisfied more than others. So that's been a revelation to me in the past 5 years when I've been general counsel of this company. But how has that stayed the same? I think that is the same. What's changed is the ability to work from home, the speed with which people are expecting decisions and feedback. And I think people are less inclined to stick through things when they're difficult. I think
Mm,
there's more mobility. When I started practicing law in the late 80s, normal for somebody to stay for their entire careers at the place that they started. That was more
yes.
likely than not. And if you look at the workforce today, people tend to have 3 to 5 job leaps, maybe even halfway through their career.
Yeah, I used to be every 2 years. Can we go back to your point around, you were talking about the multi-million dollar contract that you're on deadline for, but yet you have then somebody inquiring about pet grievance and then somebody else about something else. And you said it's the ability to be able to manage it all and ensure that everyone in the organization is, I guess, feeling heard and listened to, please everybody all the time. You said that you've really noticed that in the last 5 years. What would be your tips for anyone listening to the show in terms of how did you adapt to that rather than going, right, I've just got to finish this multi-million dollar contract, because we know that multitasking isn't necessarily great for us, and yet you're having to multitask in terms of, like, there's this number one priority, but then there's these people that are the other priority as well, and someone's just lost their pet, and that means the world to them. They're absolutely devastated. And somebody else, do you know what I mean? So I'd love to get some advice for you from everyone listening, so who is a leader and juggling this constant juggle. Because I know, listening to you, I'm like, oh gosh, yes. Like, some days I'd be like, but knew I had to address it and knew I had to just listen and be present, and the ability to understand and essentially ensure that my staff or my people were feeling heard and that they got what they needed.
I've always been like a process person. So I took this personality test once at one of my jobs, and I was sort of 90% process and 10% emotion. So I don't know what that makes me, but I'm very process oriented. So I will give myself a goal. Like, once I get through this section or these pages, then I'm going to turn and look at something else. So I'm very much about sort of that efficiency and organization and process oriented. I try not to get too distracted into, when I'm doing something, really concentrate on that one thing,
Yes.
and then give myself a break goal. If I
Mm.
can go through these sections of this contract, then I'm going to take a break and I'm going to deal with some of the other things that are on my plate, and then I'll go back to it. So that's how I do it, because that's my mindset, is that sort of, process or decision tree thinking. That's how my mind works.
I really like your call out of the break goal. I haven't heard that term before, and it's a great one for the listeners, because that break goal, you've set your goal, you set your focus, your number one priority, and as part of that, I'm a big believer in having a continuous finish line, in terms of, if when you're starting working on a project and you're starting from here and you're going all the way to the end, to the finish line, if we have those continuous mini finishing lines like you're talking about, where you get to one goal and you're running through and then you have a break and then you can go to the next one, I think that's a really good way to be able to then manage the multiple different situations that pop up as a leader, because it is continuous. It's a constant juggle. And so, how do we do it? But also, how do we ensure that we're meeting the priorities we need to meet also, so that stops us from then having to work late at night or on the weekends. It enables us to stay focused in the deep work and not be all over everywhere, and then, like, haven't got to anything I needed to get through my day. You made a comment again pre-show around change, and you said something. What did you say? You said, we were talking about change, and you said lots is changing, but then some people aren't ready for change. Was something like, is that what you said exactly? I can't remember if it was exactly that, but it was really insightful what you said.
I don't remember what I said, but on the topic of change, I don't think there's a real opportunity to be successful and not adapt to change.
Yes.
So if you look at social media, like for me, I graduated at high school in 1981. So I'm connected on social media to a lot of people I went to school with, and they're still posting like 80s bands and how great the 80s were. And it was a fabulous decade, I'm not gonna lie. But they're longing for that world. They're they're posting things about today's youth, that they're not as good as the youth in the 80s, that all of the things that were in the 80s are not as good. We're better than they are today. And that person is behind and unhappy. But then you look at other people who are also in their 60s or 70s, and they've listened to the world. They've adapted to change. They've heard what doesn't work and what does work. They've learned new technologies. They've heard from the younger generations, this is okay and this is not okay anymore because we've evolved.
Mm.
And those are the people I think who are more successful and happier in today's world.
Mm. I love that. It's so true, isn't it? In terms of resistance to change, and you must have this in, with your friends, but also within Simplify. How do you respond to, whether it's in business or in life, how do you respond to people that are resistant to change? Because it's like can't's the wrong word. There's no such thing as can't, but it's that whole, I think the more you resist it, the longer it takes for you to then embrace it, if that makes sense. So what advice do you give them, or do you, especially in the work environment?
I think it's a management of risk when it comes to, for example, in our business, the adoption of new technologies in the practice of law. It's really about managing risk and getting people comfortable that something terrible is not going to happen
Mm.
because they don't want to adopt technology because they're afraid of it, because they're afraid of bad outcomes. So starting slow, taking a small matter, doing something manageable, proving out that case,
Mm.
moving to the next step. I think it could be overwhelming to adopt new technologies all at once, but taking smaller steps, proving out the use case, showing the value, showing the minimal risk involved, showing how you manage that risk.
Mm.
I think that's what keeps people from change. And
Mm.
so that's what we try to do at Simplify is work within each of our clients' sort of risk appetite and take the quality control and show our work so that
Mm.
then they can get comfortable with using the technology. And we found tremendous success with that approach. Once we meet our clients where they are and take the time, put in the experts, the subject matter experts to bring them along and be transparent with that,
Mm.
it's usually very successful and people do move toward adoption.
Yeah, fascinating. It's so true though, isn't it? It comes back to that pause and the ability to not look too far ahead, staying present in the moment, addressing what needs to adapt at this point in time versus, I've got so much to adapt, it's all going to fall apart. Like, we don't know what, especially this year, it just feels like who knows what the end of the year is going to look like. There's all this doom and gloom. I keep coming back to that at the moment, but I'm like, is it all doom and gloom? I'm not sure. I think we're at a really pivotal time in the world where so much is up for, it's almost like everything's being thrown up in the air. And I know that sounds quite loose, but it's not intended to be. But it's almost like let's just see how it all lands. It's this is
Yes,
this
it's opportunity.
it's
When we
opportunity.
have this much change, we have opportunity to maybe get things that weren't quite right more right.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. And I think about bad power to good power as well in that regard. Like, I'm not sure if you, but I just think about that a lot as well. I've got a couple of final questions for you. One in particular around identity, and what I mean by that is as a female and someone who is very obviously successful in their career, your career in particular, how much has work been part of defining your identity? You're obviously a mum as well. Have you gone through, where I'm going with this is, have you gone through your own evolutions of change when it comes to your own identity. And the reason I ask this is because for a very long time in my career, I was so my identity was really all centered around my work. And then I had to really unpack who am I, excuse me, beyond just work. And so I was interested to see, excuse me, if you've ever had any of that, because I'm seeing and hearing a lot of it, especially as women, become more advanced in their careers, they start to really question, hang on a second, like, have you had any of those moments before?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started, and probably for most of my career, I always say life is easier when you have fewer choices. I had to work, I had kids, and I just kept going. I loved my job. I've always loved working. I love what I do, and I of course had challenges balancing, but
Mm,
I was always committed to my career. But as a woman, we often feel less confident than we should.
yes,
It takes more real life experience to prove our worth to ourselves.
yes,
I absolutely had those challenges where I feel I could have been more confident. I should have been more sure of myself. Should have felt smarter. And it took me longer than in retrospect, than I believe it should have for me to maybe come into my own, but I'm happy to be here now and to have had the revelation. It was really, almost 5 years ago that it was the biggest pivotal moment when our executive chairman called me and asked me if I wanted to be general counsel of this company. And I said, "Gee, I don't know. Am I ready to be a general counsel?"
yeah.
So I was 58 years old. I had worked 22 years at Jones Day, 11 at Goldman Sachs. And I asked that question. And to his credit, he said, "Well, Marla, if not now, when?" And that
So
had
incredible.
such an impact on me because I snapped out of it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, and the older we get, the more we become into our prime in terms of our wisdom, our experience. It's fascinating that we do question ourselves, and then we have those pivotal conversations, and then it's like, yes, here I am. You've got a daughter and you've got a son. What advice do you give them as part of their career progression and, from a leadership perspective? Your daughter's a lawyer, your son's in politics. Do
My
you give advice?
I give a lot of advice to them, some wanted, some unwanted. Um, my number one advice to them and to all of the, sort of younger junior people ask me is, you don't have to plan out your whole life. You
No.
only have to decide what's next. So you don't have to say, where do I want to be in 30 years? You only have to say, what do I want to do next?
Yes.
And whatever you do doesn't have to be a permanent decision. For example, if you see a job that you're interested in, you can interview for that job. That doesn't mean if you get it, you have to take it. You can do things that are just exploring something.
Mm,
That doesn't mean you have to do it or it's final or you can't make another pivot. And to be honest, you just never know what's going to happen
mm,
anyhow. So
mm.
those really long range plans, they're good to have as an aspiration. It's good to have a direction and know where you want to go, but you don't have to make decisions except for what's just next.
I love that. So good, Marla. You're so full of all these amazing insights. Final question, then I'll get you to share a bit of wisdom. You've shared so much already. Juggling it all. So you called out balance earlier, and you didn't necessarily always have the balance right. I don't believe in the word balance. I just don't think there's any such thing as like the difference between work and life and balance. I call it life work integration, life work flow. Actually, you were super successful in your career, a mum of two, raising children. That would have been, of course, that was a juggle in itself. Now you're a mum of two adults. You've also got a grandchild. has that juggle how has that juggle shifted and changed for you?
Over the years, it's shifted and changed back and forth, up and down, all around. Things that are the priority at the moment, what you do and where you choose to spend your time. But now I feel that this is more my time. So I'm able to spend more time with my grandson. I'm able to give more to my family than I did in the building years. Because
Mm,
even though I still have a pretty hard job and work a lot, I I know what I'm doing, and I
mhm,
feel that comfort, which is liberating. And we spend so much of our time when we're building and when we're junior worrying or obsessing or reconsidering and thinking about everything that we've done or are going to do. So it's like double or triple work because we do the work, then we think about what it was, then
yeah,
we think about what the next thing is. Where as you get, I think, more senior and more comfortable, it's easier to let the work go and to give your time more fully to the other important things in your life. And for me, that's family.
that's so beautiful. It's so great with the tulips behind you as well. It's perfect. It's a perfect backdrop. Marla, do you have any final words of wisdom for, I guess, for your anyone who is, what would my question be? Gosh, this is a tricky one, actually. Anyone who is, I guess, from a younger generation, freaking out about the world as it stands and everything, and like utterly overwhelmed and not even having the ability to plan for what's next, what would be your advice for them? Yeah.
I mean, if you look back through, the history of civilization, basically, there have been a lot of trying times in the world, times that were terrible, that were evolutionary, that were changing. And the human spirit has always succeeded,
Right.
and I bet on us. I just bet on humanity. I bet on love and respect and friendship and humanity.
It's beautiful. Marla, thank you so much. What a privilege. What a great conversation. I loved every bit of this. Thank you so much. How do we find out more about Cimplifi? How do we find out more about Marla?
So for Simplify, you can go on simplify.com, Cimplifi.com, and that will have everything about our company. And I am on LinkedIn. Feel free to look me up and send me a note. I respond, as I said, I'm friendly and I respond to everyone.
You're incredible. Thank you so much, Marla. What a beautiful conversation. I just feel like I could just reach out to you all the time, like, Marla, this is going on. And every time I need a little pick me up or pep up and just focus, just bet on us, just bet on the human spirit. And I take out of every bit of our conversation today, it's been an incredible conversation, but that reminder to everyone listening to this is just bet on us. Don't forget about the human spirit, the love, respect, and optimism. I'm not suggesting positive toxicity, but that it's rather than focusing on the doom and gloom, let's focus on what is right in front of us right now. So, Marla, thank you so much. I'm going to let you get to your evening. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, B. It was a pleasure talking with you.
No, thank you.